Everybody for your patience. 9:15 a.m. Discussion and interaction, Pocahontas County Courthouse Security Grant Application and Resolution. Okay. We have this as an ongoing item at this point. We have a security grant opportunity in front of us, and that grant will be due April 1st if we decide to submit it. It would pay for just over $150,000 worth of equipment, including Bill, I'm kind of reading off here. I don't know if I have mine here or not. Card access security system. That's one. 2 is video security system. 3 is an X-ray machine. 4 is a metal detector. That's $159,000 proposal, and that funding would come through the court system, so it wouldn't be an expense to the county commission for the equipment. However, what would be an expense for the commission would be that in order to apply for this grant, we have to pledge people power, employees, to work the security equipment, to man the door, etc. Also, we would have, no doubt, an ongoing expense, an annual contract of some sort to include maintenance and repair and upkeep of the system. What we've talked about today is if we, if we can afford to fund the positions. And we talked about at our last meeting the idea of we would need two positions probably, because you can't have just one person. Would have to have a day off, some kind of thing like that, and there had to be somebody else to fill in. We talked about whether these would be deputies, whether these would be just security people who have had experience in security before but may not be full deputies. We talked about hiring them full-time, talked about hiring them part-time, and that's kind of where we are. But the budget meeting's set now. We know that next week, 3 days throughout March here, we'll be trying to figure out how to fund the budget for next fiscal year. We're in good shape. We probably have the money to do this if we want to. We can find it and make some decisions on what we're not going to fund otherwise. But that's the question in front of us. Do we want this grant? And if so, we have to come up with the people, so are we going to hire those positions? And we have letters from several of the courthouse offices asking for this improvement in the security infrastructure, including Circuit Clerk, Ms. Carr is here, Sheriff Janice, I believe you have correspondence in there too, asking for support of this. Magistrate offices as well. In the last, I think as I said last time, in the last 5 years or so, there have been a few incidents where courthouse personnel and elected officials have felt threatened by certain unfortunate circumstances. That's where we are now. And I don't know if there's any action to take today on this, but I would like to give the commissioners a chance to mention what their latest thoughts on it are, and then we'll hear from members of the audience here. Mr. Beard, you got any latest thoughts on it?
Well, my opinion is, I guess if we can have a couple days of the budget session and see, as far as finances, I think that'll lead us probably to the right direction of it. We have to come up with that fund for hiring, like to say, probably 2 people. So I personally would like to look a little bit on the budget issue and see what the funds are available, and kind of look at it too down maybe next year too, even what the funding will be for the next several years.
From this source of funding, you mean? Mr. Walker, what do you think?
Well, I agree with what Mr. Beard said 100%. I think that's number one. There's not much need to start something that you can't continue. So if it's going to be obvious the money's not going to be there for the next couple of years to keep full-time people, then maybe it's a possibility of taking part-time people to lower, your funding a little bit. But I personally feel we need to see where the money's at before we make a definite decision.
Yeah, I think that's where we were at last time. I feel the same way. That's where we're at today. We want to get the cart before the horse, but I hope we can figure something out to help improve the security of the courthouse for people who work here and the public we serve. Mr. Alderman, was this the issue you wanted to speak on?
Yes, it is.
You're signed up. If you could, go ahead, please.
I'm opposed to any more electronic contraptions in this county courthouse. We had a problem with the camera system up at Durban. We had to call the FCC in to get rid of it. It caused a lot of internal conflict between the magistrates over that. And we've never heard it really addressed by anybody else thus far, but it was a serious breach of the law. One of the things that was involved up there was those cameras were dangerous. They were not approved by the FCC. And because of that, they could have killed somebody coming in there who had a pacemaker or something like that.
It was a wireless camera, a Wi-Fi camera.
Mm-hmm. The second thing is that we had our election was drastically affected by the improper use by Mr. Janice of the cameras in his office, and I would like to ask him, whatever happened with that complaint the county commission filed against you? You don't know?
I'm not here to discuss that.
Do you all know that?
Yeah, we can speak to that.
Okay, would you do that, and then I'd like to have a few more comments. Tell me now, what happened with that? Was he held guilty of that?
Well, what we know is that we don't know where it stands. It's still in front of the ethics commission.
Hasn't it been there like a year and a half or
For a long
something?
time.
And what are you all doing to find out?
Well, we last inquired on the status of that probably in around September, October. It had already been some time at that point, and the ethics commission said, I believe they wrote us a letter or replied in an email and said that it's still pending. They can't share any details of the case, etc., but it's still pending.
Okay.
Now, what we're referring to is that the county commission at that time wrote a letter to the ethics commission to ask them to investigate the issue,
Right.
which we're speaking about, concerning the use of security camera footage and concerning the candidate Donna Meadows Price at the time.
Right.
So we did file that complaint with the ethics commission, and last week we heard, and we did ask them, where does this case stand? Was that
So are you
Still
all
pending.
got any deadline when you're going to find out?
they issued no deadline at all to us, no indication of when the matter would be addressed.
Are those cameras still over there, Dave? Still there? Are they being used for the right purposes?
Well, it's been used for the right purpose.
You're saying that was the right purpose, what you did? I think the county
So I
commission,
did it.
I think the county commission ought to man up on this thing and make some type of resolution to go down to find out what they're doing. This has been long enough. That was a drastic impact upon our election.
It was quite a chapter in our history for sure, and the ethics commission has told us that it's still pending, and they can't speculate on when that case will be resolved. I agree. I find that timeline, which is basically no timeline at all, unacceptable. And what we can do again, and we probably should at this point, is ask the ethics commission again where that case stands to see if they.
Yeah, I'd like to ask you to do that publicly.
We will do that.
Ask you to do that.
It's important to do that.
So, given the fact that we've already got legal ramifications resulting from this security business, does that not cause you any concern about expanding this security system?
Well, speaking for myself, honestly, it does cause some concern. I know that the sheriff works hard to protect the citizens of the county, and I know that incident, as I spoke with the sheriff and we talked about before, I thought better judgment should have been used in that matter. It does concern me that the increase in the number of security cameras here in the courthouse would take place by this grant, and that if we don't have some some lessons learned or some trust that they're going to be used properly. You bet, that is a concern. And honestly, that one aspect is sort of the central concern I have about the equipment we're considering purchasing.
It seemed to me like the cameras basically are pretty ineffective. I mean, remember what was said in the hearing that Totten was having sex all over the courthouse, even in the sheriff's own office, and he couldn't figure it out?
Well,
It just seemed to me like that I don't know what your cameras are trying to accomplish.
Mr. Alderman, you're way off
I
base.
think
You
that's
have no
speaking out of
idea.
line.
I'm talking about from the
There
transcript
were no cameras in there when all that was going on, okay?
in your office.
No idea. That's exactly
Well, I
right.
know, that's the point I'm making. Are you wanting to put cameras in your office? Where would these cameras go?
In the common areas, in the public areas, in the courtroom.
And would they be upstairs in the courtroom? And so any juvenile having interaction with the judge, we'd get to know, wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we know if you got a camera in the hallway?
You got a camera in the hallway, what's that got to do?
You said the courtroom.
It would be in the courtroom.
You want to have cameras in the court?
It's not
Mr.
for you
Alderman?
to view, Mr. Alderman.
Huh?
It's not going to be available for you to view.
Mr. Alderman, I can address some of the concerns about where the cameras would be. We've talked about that there might or might not be. It's really up to us as whether we want to put the camera. Mr. Pomponio, in talking with us, said that it's up to us as whether we want to, where we want to put the cameras. It's our decision. And that, of course, if there were to be a camera in any of the courtrooms, that is a special circumstance where that footage is not available except by court order. So that's different from a camera in the hallway or in this room or et cetera, which would be used, would just be a continuous record of all the business going in and out of the courthouse for the safety of the people and the employees.
Well,
The
it's a
question
breach.
does remain who has access to that.
It seemed like a
would be
breach of
911 and the sheriff's
confidentiality.
office.
If you've got cameras in the hallway up there, it's a little tiny hallway, and you've got all these domestics coming in and out, and you've got all these CPS cases coming out. I actually heard a CPS worker discussing a case right in the hallway. That would. We talking about the sound here, Dave? Are we talking about sound? You're not talking about putting sound on.
The video security system has no audio. It's video.
Well, I would want to be certain that it did not have audio,
Right.
because we have reason to believe that there was audio put in up there at Durban.
Well, Mr. Alderman, again, that's an allegation, and that camera has been removed.
Yeah, well, they removed the office too. That ought to cause you some concern. I think that we lost that office because of those cameras.
I don't think we definitely did not lose the office because of the cameras.
Okay.
We were involved we wrote correspondence to the magistrate court officials and asked them to keep that office open.
So
They
you are
extended that office
you are
for 6
contemplating
months.
putting cameras in the courtrooms. Is that right? This is unbelievable. I cannot believe that you all are thinking about that. Bill, are you talking about putting cameras in the courtrooms?
Well, we were kind of overseeing what has happened in a lot of other counties. Greenberg County, we went down to look at their system, and from what all we heard from their system, they're getting along real well with it. So,
Well, they're looking at it from their perspective. I've been through their system several times.
All of the states.
Yeah, I've been through that several times. And we're talking about x-rays. You know how many times I've been x-rayed? I'm not very comfortable with that.
Mr. Alderman, I appreciate these concerns. I agree, particularly with the aspect that the video security system is the most concerning item here. If we're going to come up with positions for security personnel for this, if we're going to go forward with this grant, we definitely need to understand where and why we're putting cameras. And we know that who would have access to those cameras would be 911 and the sheriff's office. There are other aspects about the system besides video security that I think are quite beneficial. One is the card access security system. Instead of having to use keys to get in the courthouse and rekey those when one's lost, we can have the card so that it can be programmed per card holder per door to allow the person with the card access to the areas he or she needs access to and not to other areas. And those cards can be changed as employees leave. And such. So I think that's a good part of the system.
You're talking about four entrances to this courthouse. How would you protect those with two people?
Well, as we currently do, the only doors open to the public during business are the front door and the ADA door. And the back door and the side door are, of course, there for egress, but you have to be an employee with a key and use your key to come in those doors. But we've already...
So it would limit the public's access to the courthouse.
It sets up the access to be a more safe environment. Of course, all doors are exits. Anybody can get out in case of a fire. We have to have them.
Yeah, except on certain days in which there's a bench put at the bottom of the stairs. I took pictures of this.
Well, I'm not aware of it.
Can you imagine what kind of exit would have taken place if there would have been a fire whenever the talking case was up here?
So, I don't know about the bench stairs. I'm not aware of
It's
that.
there. Dave will tell you that. He'll admit it.
So,
You put a bench at the foot of the stairs.
At the direction of the judge.
Well, then the judge was wrong.
That's between you and him.
You get the
Mr.
fire
Alderman.
marshal. You get the fire
Mr.
marshal.
Alderman, I'm going to keep this on purpose here. So that's the card access security system. Number 2 is the video security system. Primarily, that's what you're speaking to. Number 3 is the X-ray machine, which will be used to scan at the front door for explosives, weapons, etc.
And they don't have that in Greenbrier County. They don't use it if they do.
They do have it.
Well, I've never had anybody X-ray anything I ever took in there.
And 4 is the metal detector to detect things like
Now,
that.
the metal detector, I can understand that.
So if we're going to have, for example, a metal detector in the X-ray machine, we have to have security. And your question about how are they going to man all the doors or staff all the doors is a good question. And the answer is essentially they don't have to, because the public won't come in through the back door or the side door. That we want to have the access to the front as we do now.
But how's a crippled person going to get in?
In that situation, we've talked about that quite a bit. We'll have a video camera at the bottom, and that one probably would have to have an audio mic to request for help, so that the security person can see the feed and hear them, and someone in a wheelchair or other handicap access can call for assistance if they need assistance to get in, and that security person can go down there and help them in.
So the security person would bring them up to the front of the building.
No, through the ADA door with the ramp is.
But how would they go through the process? How would they go through the metal detector and the X-rays and all that?
We've talked about getting a handheld metal detector, a handheld one, so that the security person can go down and the person in the wheelchair or the walker or what it
Okay.
is, they could scan them.
But if they bring explosives in, there won't be any check for that.
Well, I presume the security person would
How would they
train-
check for an
have a
explosive
protocol
if they
check.
don't have an X-ray machine?
So,
I don't think this is very, very well thought out, Jamie. I think this is a dunderhead idea.
And
But
so
I'll stop.
courthouses all over the state are doing it, and you think it's a bad
What's that?
idea. Courthouses all over the state are doing it, and you think it's a bad idea.
I do. Absolutely. What are we trying to turn this county into an armed camp? But I don't mean to do a soapbox, because John's got something to say.
thank you, Mr. Alderman, for your concerns. We need to hear these concerns. Mr. Dorick, give you a chance to speak here in a moment. Just want to say that as we consider this proposal, please continue to share your concerns with us. I believe that we can take good steps, and we don't have to do all of this necessarily. It's completely up to us what we want to choose in this package.